Plus, Cheryl, other people comply. They put out the money. If we say to these people, you don't have to.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Pardon? I don't remember. I think, no, I did not. No, not since we talked. No, I haven't. Done a lot of things. We did drag our golf clubs up to Green Lake, not Green Lake, sorry, Lake Geneva. But it rained that Sunday, the Sunday that we had off to go golf. It was pouring, so we had to come back with our clubs. We did other things, you know. You know, the problem is if you don't do anything, you eat.
I know that's. Yours?
We just came back from the Finger Lakes in New York. And had a great time. That's all. You drive, you eat, you go to the bed in the old motel, you get up, you eat, you drive around a little bit, go see some stuff, you eat, you go to bed. I come back, I'm 7 pounds heavier.
All right, the time is 7 p.m. We'll call this meeting to order. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call, please? Here.
Trustee Berkshire.
Here.
Trustee Napolitano.
Here.
Trustee Domke.
Here,
Trustee Lanisa. Here. Trustee Perkowski.
Here.
Trustee Trejo.
We have a quorum. We'll now move on to presentation of the prepared agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
so moved.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Seeing none, that motion carries. We'll now move to Village Board public comment. Anyone wishing to provide a comment on a topic or an agenda item may address the Village Board during the public comment and public hearing segments of the Village Board agenda by submitting comments in advance using the online forum or live at the meeting. Madam Clerk, do we have any comments submitted in advance?
We do. The first comment is from Ann Downs of Roselle. Is Ann here? Okay. Ann writes, I have been a resident of Roselle for 17 years. I have heard from several concerned parents about speeding cars in our town, mainly from teenagers on streets like Foster, Bryn Mawr, Rodenberg, and Menching. Several concerned parents have reported the following incidents. This is just a sample. 1, seeing teenagers driving at least 60 miles down Menching and Foster Avenues. 2, in July 2022, a group of teens drove off the road and onto the property of Klaus Rec Center where the baseball fields are located. 3, cars driving around a stopped school bus when the bus has the stop sign out and lights flashing on Walnut, Foster, Prospect. 4, cars speeding down Roselle Road with cars speeding at least twice the speed limit. 5, cars running the red light at Central and Roselle Road. 6, several of these parents have reported these incidents to the police, but the reckless driving continues, especially in residential neighborhoods.
Thank you. Chief, do you have any comments about kind of our approach to enforcement of these types of activities?
Thank you. With school in session, we always increase patrols in and around the schools. We've been increasing patrols around Foster, Menching, Bryn Mawr, Rodenberg, et cetera. We have seen in the last 12 months an increase in our traffic citations of 43%. That's over last year. In July of this year, we wrote 21% more citations than we did in July of 2021. And then since August 1st, we've actually made arrests of 6 people for misdemeanor speeding, 2 of which were between 26 and 34 over the limit, and 4 were 35 plus over the limit. We're also seeing that these numbers that we have are tracking the national standards from the National Highway Traffic Safety Council. So we are aware of it. We are out there doing our work. Any complaint specifically that we have, we address. We address those with speed plates. We address that with engineering with our Public Works Department. Most of it is education. We have the speed trailers. So we've been putting the speed trailer out and trying to work on the education piece as well. But it's an ongoing effort with us.
Thank you so much.
The second one is from Scott Mrock. Scott here? Okay, Scott Marock of 1315 Chatham Lane in Roselle writes, with the new exterior transport location being built on Rodenberg Road, how is the Village of Roselle going to limit the increase in trucking traffic on Rodenberg and Central? Schaumburg states that the trucks will not be able to go south into Roselle. How would this be enforced and for how long? Years ago, Schaumburg stated that jets wouldn't be able to use the airport there, but I witnessed them multiple times taking off and landing. I hope this doesn't turn out the same way because it could become a traffic and safety nightmare.
Thank you. Deputy Chief Kuster, can you comment on that by any chance?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The trucks coming out of that, the new company out of Schaumburg, we cannot control them coming out. That would be a Schaumburg PD enforcement. However, on our side, we can still control the weight. It is a class truck route, which cannot stop the trucks from coming through Roselle on Rodenberg or Central. However, we can enforce the weight rules that we have in place.
Thank you so much. And I will note, we have been engaging Schaumburg through this process. And while, some of this might be less desirable for our community, we continue to work and cooperate as two communities. And we hope that we can continue to leverage that together. Bruce?
So to answer the gentleman's question, there is no way of us enforcing that.
Correct. We can enforce the.
Will go down there and will increase traffic. So his question, which was, will that increase? And just like Schaumburg said, no jets, the answer is yes, it has a possibility.
Correct.
The third comment is from Julie Muller. Julie of 535 Dover Court in Roselle. And she writes, I, as well as my neighbors, are curious as to when the sewer improvements on Dover Drive and Dover Court are going to resume. From my understanding, the sewer is in really bad condition and can fail at any time, causing waste backup into my home as well as my neighbors' homes. If and when that happens, is the village then going to be responsible for the damage and cleanup to our houses? I have not heard about a new date to start the work, nor have I seen anything that this has been discussed since June of this year when the job was initially approved.
So we're aware of the situation on Dover and appreciate that residents' comment. Public Works is continuing to engage on that matter specifically and work to find the best engineering solution for this specific problem. Unfortunately, this time, like a lot of things, we're continuing to work through that project to understand timelines. So I know speaking with our director and assistant director in Public Works, they'll continue to be in touch with that resident as we have more information. All right. Is there any member of the public here today that'd like to address the board? All right, seeing none, we will move on then to official and staff reports. I have a lot of thank yous to give out. So first, I'd like to thank Missy for all of her work to help coordinate the Rosa Recycles event, and to Trustee Della Penna, Trustee Berkshire, and Clerk Houseman for being there. It was a fantastic event. We had, I think from our vehicle counts, I saw we had 1,000 come through based on our bump count. So that's fantastic. I know residents really appreciate that event. And also would like to thank Trustee Domke, Trustee Lanisa, Trustee Della Penna, as well as Clerk Houseman, Administrator Belowski, our chiefs for being out there at the merger hearing in Itasca last night. So we presented I think a compelling public comment section so that way we can at least continue to advocate for the best option for our community. And we look forward to hearing the STV's response to our comments and whatnot, and see if we can get a draft EIS report revised. We will be pushing out information for residents to submit written comment, whether it was delivered verbally or electronically. They are treated the same by the board. So we encourage all residents to make their voices heard and to submit that comment, so that way they understand the concerns that we have as a group. That being said, is there any trustees that have a report tonight? Trustee Domke.
I do. I want to say I'm sorry I didn't come to that recycle event. I was out of town, but hopefully next year, if we have it, I sure will like to jump on that. We have here in my possession tickets for the Roselle Dinner Dance, which is November 4th. This is not a surprise birthday party. This is a real birthday party that everybody can come out to. The tickets are $65 each, and they're available at the Village Hall desk. And also they can be gotten on www.rosellesistercities.org. So it's going to be a big party. So hopefully we have a great time on November 4th at Venuti's.
Great, thank you so much. Any other trustees have a report tonight? Seeing none. Village Clerk?
Green Roselle is hosting a Composting 101 event on Tuesday, September 20th from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. at the Scout Lodge. The expert speaker is Scarce's Executive Director, Kay McKean, who has been named Illinois Recycler of the Year multiple times and has helped write and pass legislation related to composting policy. There is no registration required, and it will be a good introduction for anyone new to recycling their food scraps.
Great, thank you. Village Attorney, any report?
No report, Mayor.
Village Administrator?
No report.
All right, we'll move on to unfinished business. First is the consent agenda. All items listed on the consent agenda are considered to be routine, procedural, informational, self-explanatory, or non-controversial in nature and will be enacted in one motion. There'll be no discussion of these items. Tonight, we have presentation and approval of the village board minutes of August 2nd, 2022. Adopt a resolution approving, accepting, and authorizing the donation of the Centennial Mosaic located at 107 East Main Street from the Roselle Arts and Culture Foundation. Adopt a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of an agreement by and between the Village of Roselle and Engineering and Enterprises Incorporated for design engineering services for the 2023 water main replacement program in the amount of $144,175. Adopt a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a contract by and between the Village of Roselle and Big Ass Fans. Adopt a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of an agreement by and between the Village of Roselle and Trotter and Associates. Adopt a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an easement agreement between the Village of Roselle and the Commuter Rail Division of the Regional Transportation Authority for Rottenberg Road. Pass an ordinance amending Chapter 13, Article 6, Section 1389 of the Code of Ordinance of the Village of Roselle. And that is all. Is there a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call, please? Oh, sorry. I skipped that. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as read first?
I'll move.
We should,
Perfect. Thank you, Wayne. And then who's that? Tom Delapenna, that second. Thank you. Roll call then. Thank you.
Trustee Domke,
aye.
trustee Delapenna.
Aye.
Trustee Berkshire,
Yes.
trustee Lanisa. Aye. Trustee Perkowski.
Aye. That passes. Thank you. Community Development, trustee Domke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to pass an ordinance granting a special use for the property commonly referred to as 816-818 of Central Avenue.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, could we have a roll call, please?
Trustee Domke,
Aye.
trustee Delapenna,
Aye.
trustee Berkshire,
Yes.
trustee Lanisa. Aye. Trustee Perkowski.
Aye. That motion carries.
Mr. Mayor, I'd also like to make a motion to adopt a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of an agreement by and between the Village of Roselle and HR Green Incorporated.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Seeing none, that motion carries. That is all for community development tonight. Administration, trustee Delapenna.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of an agreement by and between the Village of Roselle and Mangy Dog Roselle, Inc. and Mangy Dog Pub Roselle LLC.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Just like to thank staff for their work. I know this was, and the attorney, because this was a lot of back and forth on this specific agreement. So with that being said, Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call, please?
Trustee Delapenna,
Aye.
trustee Domke,
Aye.
trustee Berkshire,
Yes.
trustee Lanisa. Aye. Trustee Perkowski.
Aye. That motion carries.
I would also like to make a motion to pass an ordinance amending Chapter 3, Article 2 of the Code of Ordinances of the Village of Roselle.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Delapenna,
Aye.
trustee Domke,
Aye.
trustee Berkshire,
Yes.
trustee Lanisa. Aye. Trustee Perkowski.
Aye. That motion carries.
That is all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We have nothing under fire or police tonight. Public Works, trustee Berkshire.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution approving and authorizing the extension of an agreement by and between the Village of Roselle and Uno Mas Landscaping, Inc.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call, please?
Trustee Berkshire,
Yes.
trustee Domke,
Aye.
trustee Delapenna.
Aye.
Trustee Lanisa. Aye. Trustee Perkowski.
Aye. That motion carries.
Thank you. Then I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution approving and authorizing the extension of an agreement by and between the Village of Roselle and Cosick Tree Services, Inc.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Seeing none, that carries.
Thank you. And then finally, I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute change order number 1 for the 2022 Storm Sewer Improvement Program between the Village of Roselle and Scalon Excavating and Concrete for additional work in the amount of $20,757.15.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, could we have a roll call, please?
Trustee Berkshire.
Yes.
Trustee Domke.
Aye.
Trustee Della Penna.
Aye.
Trustee Lanisa. Aye. Trustee Burkowski.
Aye.
Motion carries.
And that's it, Mr. Mayor, for Public Works.
Thank you. We'll move to finance. Trustee Prokowski.
Thank you, Mayor Plesky. I'd like to move approval of the accounts payable list for September 23rd, 2022 in the amount of $1,642,362.90.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, could we have a roll call, please?
Trustee Burkowski.
Aye.
Trustee Lanisa. Aye. Trustee Berkshire.
Yes.
Trustee Della Penna.
Aye.
Trustee Domke.
Aye.
That motion carries. We'll now move on to new business. We do have a second opportunity for public comment. Madam Clerk, do we have any submitted in advance?
Terry Erickson of Roselle writes, regarding the proposed path/tunnel near the Roselle Metro Station, which is on the agenda to be discussed, there are some points which the trustees and local residents should seriously consider. The proposed bridge path is only 400 feet from an existing route. The difference is that the bridge path requires people to go up and down an incline, which is more difficult than the existing flat route of Maple Avenue. Is that really worth $3.75 million plus design cost? The suggested tunnel under the railroad tracks is only 300 feet from either of two existing routes, Irving Park Road and the Metro Station platform crossings. If there is a benefit, only pedestrians and bicyclists get it. This does nothing to fix the real issue of delays caused by the very problematic traffic signal at Maple and Irving Park Road. That affects both pedestrians and drivers trying to get to the Metro Station from Maple Avenue or to simply cross Irving Park Road. A far better plan would be to petition the Illinois Transportation Enhancement Program to simply make the traffic signals be useful in allowing people to cross Irving Park Road from Maple Avenue in a timely manner, which does not currently exist. This could have been much cheaper and much quicker, as well as have a more useful impact to more residents. It would also be useful to install warning signals at the platform crossings at the Roselle Metro Station. Currently, there are no audible visual indication that trains are approaching except for the train itself, which has been a safety concern for a long time. This would be even more important if the train horns were silenced at Roselle Street crossings. This could also be done much cheaper and much quicker than a tunnel under the tracks. I am in favor of sensible improvements. This isn't one of them. Public input should be the first step to help form useful plans to submit. Nobody asked me or residents for their input before hiring a designer to develop this. Even Mayor Pileski has stated in the past that he was against a pedestrian bridge over Irving Park Road. Please get opinions from residents first before wasting money to design plans for greatly flawed ideas. That includes the plans for a pedestrian island at Devon and Roselle Road without crosswalk signals to control traffic while crossing.
Thank you. While we appreciate the comments, I just would like to state for the record that most of these projects were highlighted in our comprehensive plan, which had extensive public comment participation. As far as the audible or visual indicators at the train, that is currently at a price tag of about $1 million, and that's a part of our settlement proposal, given the merger situation there, and would be required for any quiet zone to be implemented in a way that we feel would be most beneficial to our community. And those are things that we're actively exploring. While the tunnel is listed on the design, it's not something that we are explicitly pursuing at this time. And us visiting and having this conversation today is to take the board's temperature on it. And we believe it is something that could be a part of our settlement with the CP merger, and would also be well positioned to receive grant money to help further our residents in terms of the way that we utilize capital. So we are also very woefully aware of the Irving Park Maple intersection deficiencies, and that's something that we are constantly in conversation with IDOT about, and knowing that there's an engineering opportunity in the future, we are looking at that, but that is going to take years of work. And so we're continuing to work on those, so it might not be at the pace that Mr. Erickson would like to see. Are there any other public comment here tonight for new business? Seeing none, we'll move on to our first item, which is the outstanding obligations for recent annexations and sidewalks. I'll allow Community Development Manager Karen Bricks to present.
All right. So in August 2019, we annexed 4 properties in Medina that were all subject to pre-annexation agreements and became contiguous to village boundaries by the annexation of a property on Sycamore. 3 of those 4 properties are currently not in compliance with the conditions of their annexation agreements. And each of those is regarding sidewalks. Of the properties, 151 Sycamore, 818 Juniper, 817 Crest, and 810 Juniper. Only 810 Juniper has it installed. As you can see in the map included in the packet, I will note that that sidewalk is also installed on private property because it's a private access to those houses back there. So each of the annexation agreements gave the property owners 3 years to install sidewalks after the date of annexation, which was August 26, 2022. So we have received a formal written request from the owner of 818 Juniper to amend the condition so as to not require the owner to install a sidewalk in the front of her property. That formal request is included in the packet as well. The homeowner for 817 Crest is here tonight. And he has been working with the county and FEMA on getting approvals to install the sidewalk for his property. So I guess what I'm asking for is some direction on how we want to proceed with handling these non-compliant properties. In discussions with the village attorney, we sort of have 3 options. We can waive the sidewalk requirement. So that would require a new public hearing for each property, as we would need to amend the annexation agreement to change the conditions. We could pursue legal enforcement, so we can submit petitions to circuit court to legally force the installation of the sidewalks through the court system. And then a third option is adopting an extension by resolution or ordinance at a future meeting to provide these owners additional time to install sidewalks. As you can see in the second map included, this area is filled with a lot of floodplain, which has also recently changed when we updated or when the county updated the flood insurance maps, I think in 2017, 2018. So that's an impact on the immediate ability to install a sidewalk. They can't just come to the village and secure a permit. They have to go through different approvals to be able to do so. Only one owner is the owner that signed the agreement. That's 817 Crest. All the other owners have changed hands between the original signer of the agreement and the current owner. So that concludes my report.
Thank you. I'll just turn it over to Mr. Costello just to talk through. I know those 3 options were outlined from a legal perspective. Are there barriers or things to consider with those 3, the waive, legal enforcement, and extension?
Yes, Mayor. Well, I would probably start with possibility of a 4th option, and I think that would be where the board would look to staff to develop some sort of policy to move forward as to how you want to deal with these properties. And I know I did read within staff memo that there was the thought process of setting forth some sort of fee akin to some, I don't know if I want to call it an impact fee. Is that way you described it, Mr. Village Administrator. But yes, something of that nature where you could then utilize those funds elsewhere in the village to connect the sidewalks. So something important to consider, and probably the least costly option of the options. I know that your village ordinance does provide for, in reviewing your village ordinance, does provide for the potential recovery of attorney's fees and court costs, but I would tell you that it would become costly to move forward to enforce the agreements. In addition, you would then have the policy decision before you to sue your residents. And that's something that you would have to consider before authorizing us to move forward to do that. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions. As far as opining on the policy part of it, I would defer to any discussion the board would have and what staff would have.
Great, I appreciate that. Any initial thoughts from the board? Wayne?
Well, this floodplain thing, I didn't see it in the packet, the way you just explained it, that when you originally went into this agreement, there was no floodplain issue.
No, there was. It just, the size of the floodplain increased with the new maps that got.
Did we take the floodplain into consideration when we were talking to these residents about what they would have to do on annexation?
I mean, as it stands today, not to cut you off, our ordinance requires sidewalks. So floodplain or not, staff is engaging them on sidewalk construction. Is that fair to say, Karen?
Yeah. The pre-annexations took place in 2004, 2007, and 2009. I looked through memos and minutes from those meetings, and the sidewalks weren't really discussed. So I can't say if they were discussed with the petitioners or not.
So then I have one other question, and it's not legal, but it's going to be kind of like legal. Do these residents even have a desire to put sidewalks in, or are they just stringing it along?
One of the owners has never really responded to any of my outreach, so.
We have one of the residents here. If you're willing to answer the question, sir, I'd be happy to allow you that opportunity. Absolutely, if you'd like to.
She's right, the floodplain was always there, but it got larger in 2019. And that's the problem.
Do you mind just speaking into the microphone so that way everyone
I've
can?
been fighting with FEMA for over a year to try and get this done the way somebody here wants it, so it ain't gonna happen. They want me to dig up my backyard and make softer ground. Why do I gotta spend all that extra money?
So is it fair to say you're willing to build a sidewalk, but you've reached barriers due to things outside of your control?
I'm in a corner right now, and I think my engineer, he's done. He can't do no more. He's not even calling me back anymore.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing that.
So obviously this resident is willing to put in sidewalks. It is our requirement. How do we not have them put sidewalks in when others have done it?
That's the conversation here today. I mean, I think this is a different flavor of things. We actually have FEMA maps that have floodplain that has very direct engineering concerns that are outside of our control. But I think of the Sandys, who had a very awkward engineering situation to put in a sidewalk there where we've had issues. We've seen this in various different flavors. We should focus on this issue at hand, but these continue to come up, and that's why we're here to get direction. So
I think we just need to address them as they come up one at a time. I mean, as far as looking at an extension, I mean, an extension doesn't, in this gentleman's case, doesn't do him any good. You know, and the other people, if they're not even calling you back, you can extend it as long as you want. You're going to still get a delayed game. They're not going to help us at all, get us where we want to be.
So in the case of these 4 properties, what would be your opinion then, if you would prefer case?
Well, if we look to waive them, I mean, I think we just have to address one at a time. And if we do decide to waive it, we have to have a specific reason for that particular property.
Other opinions from the board?
I think the gentleman has.
Absolutely. I, especially in this situation with this being floodplain and it being a federal issue, I'm not refuting that at all. at all. So I think the problem that we have is we have numerous agreements, and so we have to be mindful of how we structure this in a way so that way we can make it equitable. And that's where, if there's no other comments, well, I'll let you go, Tom.
Well, I mean, I think waive just makes sense in this scenario. The ordinance is there, but we do have that power to look at it case by case. And this is kind of a situation where, at least in this gentleman's efforts, and I assume probably for the other homeowners, there was a good faith effort to do so, and they can't. So we should probably exercise that right we have to waive our ordinance in situations where it makes sense to do so.
Bruce, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm looking at this and really the floodplain is going to affect 818, 817. And I think 810, it's not listed, but I know it's close. Oh, maybe not, because the floodplain actually goes up around the house. So the sidewalk may not be part of that. So not knowing exactly, again, this gentleman's property, I think we have a justifiable reason on why we can waive that because of the flood situation and the fact that it would be good for us to contact FEMA to talk through it, at least and understand what their position is. So for whatever reason why they're not calling you back, I would like to be able to say that, yes, we've done our due diligence, and therefore with FEMA, it is just not going to happen, as this gentleman said. And therefore we can waive something like 818 or even maybe a portion of 817. But as for the 151 and the others, we need to continue to enforce what we have. And, we've talked about this, and I don't know if this is a possibility again, but they are connected to our city and water. Go back to your well, go back to your.
So, and I think, so I'll ask the attorney. I mean, I don't know if that is something that we can legitimately shut off someone's water and sewer. I don't think that's a valid option that we can actually exercise.
I guess we should just go back. I know this is going to open up a can of worms.
Yep.
We need to stop having these conversations, get that committee back together, and just come up with a recommendation. And that is just get rid of these bloody pre-annexation agreements and just stop wasting our time. Because every 3 months, this comes up again.
Yep.
So for now, I think 818 and 817, we should at least talk to the FEMA part, waive those. And as far as the rest of them, they should be putting in sidewalks. We should be telling them such until we fix the larger issue.
Cheryl, I haven't heard.
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
agree with what Bruce is saying at all. I think it's also really difficult for us to say we're going to waive it and we're going to make an exception for 2 of the properties. Right now, you got 4 of them in this whole picture here. And, the other 2 homeowners, where are they at? Is it the one resident that sent the letter in saying she really didn't want to spend the money on it because she wanted to do something different with the money and put a pond in? Well, that's not an option.
different, right.
That's just not an option.
Exactly.
I think that kind of makes it really hard for those that are trying to do what the rules say.
So in the case of 817 and 818, which are in the floodplain, would we want to then, as was brought up earlier, have an impact fee or something so that way there's some equitability there. So those that do have to install the sidewalk, they've done something to help with sidewalks, even if they can't have it physically on their property feasibly ever. Is that something that we're open to?
Yes.
Absolutely. I mean, because they have a special condition and then we can use that fees to pick up the sidewalks or to pick up something else that we've had. So that they're unfortunately cannot do what we were asking them to do. And because of the political issue at hand with FEMA, then at least someone at 151 can say, well, how did 118 just because they're in a floodplain? Well, you know what? They're also throwing in a little something to pay for sidewalks elsewhere.
We get to the same point doing that, though. We have no teeth to enforce that either, right?
I mean, I think in an ideal situation, we can identify these things in advance and then we can put that in the initial contract. So that way there is some,
In this case.
I'll ask the attorney to opine on that. I mean, I assume we would still have to go through a
I think
process.
at this point in time,
I think the argument from the residents is that it's becoming cost prohibitive for them to move forward to put in the sidewalks because of the requirements from FEMA. Now, for you to figure out something where you're amending your agreement to allow for that fee in lieu of that, I think that's something that could be worked out. Otherwise, we could press forward on the sidewalk issue.
And then Karen, did you have anything that you wanted to add from a sidewalk or an impact fee or sorry?
Kristen, maybe just to
Kristen,
kind of speak to the role of DuPage County in issuing permits versus kind of FEMA that's been thrown out.
Yeah, so FEMA is not the permitting agency. This would go through DuPage County. I've actually been on pre-application meeting calls with both 817 and 818. The county has indicated that they are able to install a sidewalk within the right-of-way and the floodplain as required. There would be grading concerns that would need to be addressed. However, there is nothing that prohibits the sidewalk from being installed, and it would be permitted. I can follow up with the county on the status of the permitting issues for 817, but that's.
Permitted but cost prohibitive is fair to say.
It would depend on what the proposed grading of the sidewalk is and if it is raising the elevation within the floodplain at all. If they're installing it at grade, there would just be the cost of the actual sidewalk.
Thank you.
Then I guess we don't have to contact FEMA.
No, we don't have to contact you.
So I guess then that takes me back to originally that there's no legitimate concern, provided we can work with the county and understand what their requirements are, and that we give some sort of guidance of not adjusting the elevation, basically lowering, you can even lower the sidewalk, and therefore then I would go back to, they should have sidewalks.
Wayne?
Well, I just want to compliment the resident that came out. This man wants to put the sidewalks in, but a third party is saying there's a lot of encumberment.
That's not.
The other ones,
Contrary to what we're just hearing from Public Works. Public Works is saying that DuPage County would allow it and can put it in as long as they don't affect the grade. So there is no there is nothing that was prohibiting anyone to putting sidewalks in.
so he,
That,
yeah.
so sorry.
I think what the difference is when he's gone out to get the work quoted or to have an engineer look at doing the installation, he's having issues with that piece of it. So the requirements in the county might not be actually finding a contractor that's willing to do that work as directed as the county is required, perhaps. I don't want to speak for you, sir. Am I summarizing correctly?
So if the grade has been raised at all within the floodplain, then they're required to provide compensatory storage for that. What? Correct. Correct. And so that could come out of anywhere on the property, whether that was adjacent to the sidewalk, excavating wider for the sidewalk, things like that. But there would be additional compensatory storage required, but it would only be for what was increased in the grade within the floodplain.
So sidewalk can get built, but you now have to mitigate what you've changed somewhere on your property. So in his case, it would mean taking whatever displacement, timesing it by 1.5 and changing his backyard in order to build the sidewalk as we've required it.
At an additional cost.
At an additional cost.
So let me make sure I understand. Someone has changed the grade of their property within the floodplain, of which now is being picked up because someone added grade to it. And now when the sidewalk comes in, they're saying, well, now you got to adjust that. Or has this been the backyard grade all time and it's never been adjusted and modified, and they're still coming in and asking for that? Because I'm confused. He's really, all they're doing is putting hard surface onto that, and they can do anything they want to account for that hard surface.
So without seeing the plans, I don't know if the grade is actually being modified for where the sidewalk is going in. If the sidewalk is going in at exactly the same grade as it currently is at,
Yes.
There is no need for comp storage.
You can excavate and put the sidewalk in and put that sidewalk flush with the current grade, and there's no additional need.
Correct.
You're willing to allow that though, and the county might not be willing to allow it at grade. Is that fair to say? I mean, I
No,
don't.
they typically want it at grade. They don't really want to get into a comp storage situation.
That's why I'm saying there's some confusion here
Yeah.
that we need to get resolved around this before we can go continuing. So
Yeah.
what I'm back to. is-
Do you mind coming up to the podium if that's okay? That way we can just hear you better and you don't have to shout. I mean, my personal opinion is we're caught dealing with an outside agency and party, and we know that these FEMA maps are set and these are floodplains. I think there's a very, it's a policy decision of the board at the end of the day, but I think that there's a lot of intrinsic differences on these properties that we will not have an answer for every single property to help us understand the engineering feasibility or the site issues there. And I think to have each of these come before us to see it is going to be time consuming. Not that I don't want to give every resident the best possible chance, but is something that we feel is that important to go through for each property for sidewalks.
I might as well say then let's just get rid of sidewalks right here now. Wipe it out. Because if we're not going to go in and take the time to go in and look, I hear what this gentleman is saying. I'm also hearing what Public Works is saying. There's a disparity. We should figure out what that difference is. Because if it's nothing more than he has to dig a little deeper to put that sidewalk in, and we're waiving it because of this, then let's stop talking about sidewalks. Period.
I understand what you're trying to do, but as soon as we make that decision, you're gonna have twice as many people in these seats that put sidewalks in the last 3 years.
Too bad.
Well,
You know,
have to deal
I'm
with
at a
it.
point, I'm at a point where we just continually go and say, well, this is a special case, let's waive this. This is another special case, let's waive that. If we're not going to be willing to take the time to go figure out what I think it's 818 is having the issue with, because it sounds like we can probably have a sidewalk put in there based on what Public Works is saying with the county, and let's not have these conversations anymore. Waive them all.
Wayne?
Okay, just hold that thought for a minute. Let's go to 151 and 810. Should they put in sidewalks?
Well, 810 has sidewalks installed. 151 does not at this time.
So
They're not in the floodplain. Yeah,
they're what?
they're not in the floodplain.
So they should put sidewalks in. There's an ordinance to put sidewalks in. They agreed to it, or somebody agreed to it when they got water and sewer. And they should live up to what they agreed to do. And if they changed hands, if the building changed hands, the new owner should have had that as part of the paperwork that they signed for when they bought the house.
Agreed, and I'm saying the same thing for 818. We need to do at least a bit of more due diligence with the county to understand what they have to do. Because it sounds like what this gentleman is hearing and what Public Works is hearing is two different stories. And let's just get to the bottom of it.
But Bruce, to the point of vacating the sidewalk issue, we should not do that. This gentleman wants to put them in.
No, he doesn't, Wayne. He does not want to put them in.
Well, you agreed, or somebody agreed to put sidewalks in, so that's what's on the docket right now. You know, and I'm glad if you put a new driveway in too. I
Sir,
think-
what address are you
I
at?
think the sidewalk ordinance was
817.
done with because people wanted to come into the village. And all we asked them is to put a sidewalk in. And they can find a myriad of excuses in 3 years as to why they don't want to do it. But when they wanted sewer and water, that wasn't the issue. So live up to what you say, and we'll live up to what we say. So I think the sidewalk ordinance is a good ordinance.
So in the case though of 817 and 818, do you want to continue to engage with DuPage County and hold on, take
We
any
gave
action on
him an
those residents?
extension to try to noodle through this problem. I think that would be a good outcome right now.
So my answer to that is we have to do it because we're hearing two different stories. We have to have the answer. And if that answer comes back, if Public Works takes the time to go look at 817 and 18 with the county and comes back and says, yep, we cannot put these in because of X, Y, and Z, then we have something to substantially stand on by us doing the investigation, and then we can waive it. If in fact the county says, no, you can put them in, you just have to do X, Y, and Z, and if it's sounding like what I'm hearing is dig the hole and pour the concrete, then they should be putting sidewalks in. We don't have any facts. I just have a map without anyone saying, other than what I'm hearing from this gentleman in the Public Works, and they're in conflict.
So the only question I have then is what is considered substantial impact then for installation? Because they'll always say you can install the sidewalk, but it's going to come at an additional mitigation. So where do we draw the line?
What's the county saying that they can, if I'm hearing what Public Works is saying, and that is, they just have to put the at grade, there's nothing there that is substantial work. It's no different than if we were to go in and rip all the sidewalks out in front of the village hall. We would still cut the hole and dig it out and pour it so that it's at grade. So what is the substantial work there?
If what we're hearing from the gentleman though, and I agree, we need to resolve what's going on between the county, but if, and this is the linchpin, I think, if it's that simple, it's a slam dunk and that's easy. If they're saying you now have to dig up a third of your backyard and you have to relocate things, what deems something substantial that we would waive or consider different policy versus that's easy? And that's my question, because we get these different things, grades, other things like that. What becomes a substantial impact to prevent a sidewalk then versus do the sidewalk?
That's a great question. Let's find out what Public Works comes back and tells us that the county is telling them they have to do. I don't know the answer to that because I'm hearing Public Works is saying there is no substantial work. There's nothing other than putting the concrete sidewalk in. So until they come back and say, this is what is there, then we can go and debate what is substantial. But right now, I have no facts on what extra work has to be done other than what this gentleman is telling us.
And from that perspective, each of these, we should just hear them on face value and go through each one like this. And it's fine. I want to make sure
Yes.
I have an understanding going out of this. So, Pierkowski.
It's gonna be probably a dumb question. These are built on the public right of ways, right? Sidewalks. I know that it varies from place to place. Why is this on the property owner if it's essentially a public good that if it's not maintained is going to be a public health hazard? That we're the ones who want the sidewalk. You know, the community is the one who's using the sidewalk, not necessarily the property owner. So we're having all this issue and we want sidewalks. I don't get why this is then something that could then, you know, be a barrier to entry when you have neighbors that have to go through this process and we'd like to get them contiguous or get more in there. And then suddenly we're asking them to do these $1,000 improvement projects. Like the connecting to water and sewer, I understand why the homeowner should have part of that cost because that is their direct benefit. But we're the ones who want the sidewalks, not necessarily this gentleman. I mean, I just.
Mayor, may I?
I'll, if you don't mind, all I'll say is that's a policy of the board and it has been a policy of the board and it has been studied and reaffirmed and that can change at any point in time. But yes, until that point, that is the policy.
Which then I go back to the fact that I agree with you. That is the policy. And the reason for such a policy is then I would suggest this and any future boards needs to start budgeting for sidewalks. Because at some point, these properties will not have that. And then you'll have a whole bunch of people saying, I can't walk on the sidewalk. I can't walk on the street. I got to walk on the street. And then it becomes a public issue walking on the street. And then the committee that we have been talking about with annexation, we can get back together and we can come back with a different recommendation. And that is get rid of the sidewalks. It's easy. We can make that recommendation. And then all the people that have put them in, sorry, that was past history. And then we start budgeting for putting sidewalks in so we can make a community instead of a bunch of little properties of grass. And then we can build it up just like any of the other little computer games and add our little sidewalks on it as a village.
So to that end and extent I don't feel like we have consensus moving forward. Do we want to provide an extension so we have time to talk with the county, or do we want to hold on this, know that we're in expiration and not take any enforcement action until we get additional information? I guess Public Works, when do you think we could get clarification from the county on specifically the properties of 817 and 818.
I don't believe anything's been submitted on 818 with the change in the property owners. I know that I have met with the county and that property owner, the prior property owner before on 818. And we discussed what is possible to do and that the sidewalk can go in there. 817, I have already reached out to the county earlier today regarding the status of their permit. I did get an out of office reply from the guy and he'll be back the end of the week. So I would hope to have something early next week.
Do you think the 26 is reasonable for us to have an update on new business on this? Or do you think that's something that would be better suited for October?
We can try to have an update for September 26th.
So I'll leave it to the board to direct what you'd like to do
I
going
think
forward.
that would only be an update for 817.
We,
It wouldn't include an update for 818 because they haven't applied with the county.
But we do have information though from for 818.
I would ask as a part of that, if we're going to talk to the county on 817, that we also look at 818, whether they've applied or not. We need to get a realistic ideas, and maybe that's impossible without plans being submitted. But I think whatever we can do to get some information about what possible mitigation might be required, if at all, for that.
It all would require engineers to determine what exactly grading wise they needed to get it in there.
Okay.
Without somebody submitting that, the county's not gonna be able to tell us anything more on that one.
So at best, we're getting 50% of an answer, and maybe a hunch. Delapena.
I don't think we need to do anything at this moment because we're not going to go to court with these people. He's obviously not going to put a sidewalk in. So if we give him an extension or not, nothing's going to happen until we get these answers back.
I think we should just defer it till we get some answers. We can at least get a better understanding of 817. We can ask the county about 818, what we would need to look at. And at least we have some insights as to what is the feasibility of this. And if it is coming back, and I think we'll have to make a judgment call if it comes of what is substantial work, Mayor, I just don't know what yet. They come back and say that like in this gentleman's case, you have to dig up your whole backyard. That to me sounds pretty substantial. But if it's, 3 feet in front of the sidewalk, you have to lower that grade a little bit. Well, then maybe it's not so bad. Because then when they're digging the hole for the concrete, they can take that away too.
Tom, Cheryl, Wayne. You first, Tom, but yeah.
I guess I just want to revisit that thing, and I'd like to maybe have that be explored, the whole idea of why this is always on the property owner. Because there are municipalities where public sidewalks are public. And I think that is something to consider, because then on another level, it would give us a lot more control over the situation. This whole thing, it wouldn't be like a he said, she said type of thing as we're trying to go through these different things. We'd be in control of that. And then also, I mean, even just from like a liability type of issue, it would give us more control over maintenance if, a sidewalk's in disrepair and becomes a slip and fall issue or a trip and fall issue. It seems almost like, I'm not going to say it's like a road, but a sidewalk is a public path. It's a public thing used by the public. There's no, unless it's on the private property, there's no barriers to anyone being there. So it feels like this should be something that we at least look into as to why this policy is. I understand it's the policy, but nobody gave an answer, and that is why it's the policy.
And I can say we are preparing other examples for that group to look at that are outside of this. So we have situations where we might have sidewalks on one side of the road and other things that we want to throw to that working group to also evaluate. So that is something that's on our agenda to send to them. In the case of 817 and 818, are you fine deferring any judgment until we have additional information? Okay. Sherilyn, Wayne, I assume you agree as well?
We didn't address 150.
That's what I was going to go to right now. So I think 817 and 818 is clear based on the floodplain issue. 151 is not in the floodplain. Do you want to defer on them as well, or do you want to consider taking different action on that property?
You're looking.
I was just looking at general audience.
So in general, I mean, they have no legitimate piece. Every other property owner that we have and discuss, we tell them they need to put their sidewalk in. So until we get rid of that policy and until we come to some sort of an agreement on that.
Extension or legal enforcement in that case?
My answer would be legal enforcement. I would love to make an example of 151. We keep running against this in every conversation we have. And if we're not going to win it, and if council thinks that this is just a waste of time and money and effort, I go back to my original statement. Please, someone get the committee back together so we can address this as a whole.
We do that first? Your opinion?
Um,
Address it as a whole, or?
at that point, yeah, we might as well just do that extension and waive it. And just and hold on to it and not push that envelope till we come to a full conclusion.
So,
And you know where my answer is going to be already, so.
so Delapenna, do you want to waive? Is that your feeling and revisit the policy?
Right now, it sounds to me like there's too many unknowns in all of these for us to make a decision one way or the other. So I guess at this point, I would just defer it.
Okay,
For,
defer.
I don't think you can make an example of somebody. I don't think that's appropriate to do. I think that if we're deferring the other two, we deferred this one along. with it right now.
Okay, Wayne.
You know, I'm kind of agree with Bruce, and I'll tell you why. Either you do this and you mean it, or you just forget about it. And I'm not saying maybe legal, but I think we should threaten legal. Okay, to that point, we should send them a letter. You agreed to do this. If you don't do this, we're gonna seek legal action. Now, the thing with Tom, what he said about sidewalks being our ownership and not the residents, I can see a time when a person applies for incorporation and we charge them an incorporation fee, which will cover the cost of us putting the sidewalk in. And then the sidewalk would go in right away and there'd be no deferred anything. Okay, so that my thoughts. I'm somewhat in agreement with Bruce because what he's saying is if you don't enforce something, then it doesn't exist. And this is a classic example, and there's more coming. 556 is another one that's coming. So.
So, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to maybe propose a third option. Let's just sit on it until the committee gets together and we come back and propose a new policy, because you know what? I can tell you what this vote is going to be on that committee. Just get rid of the sidewalk concept, get rid of this whole thing, because to Wayne's point and to this, we have no teeth. We made these things up along the way. No one here is willing to enforce it. And I don't mean this board. I mean all the boards. In the 8 years that I've sat on this,
Danced around it.
we dance around it, and every time we come in, and it's the poor homeowners that come in like this gentleman that have to come in and give us an explanation, and we still dance around it. So let's just sit on it till the committee meets and comes back with a recommendation. And I think we all kind of get a sense of where at least this recommendation should go, because we have no teeth on this.
And I would say from a staff perspective, could we set a deadline for November to bring something forward? Is that fair? I'm looking at Public Works and Community Development and Admin. Does that feel like a fair timeline? Because I think we've got a whole bunch of examples we can have Cheryl and Bruce look at and bring back and kind of see whether we want to massage the policy or go and make a whatever that ends up looking like. We can provide a lot of different examples. I think before we kind of looked at it in a myopic lens, and I think we have a lot more gradations of examples of what's happened that will help us maybe bring some more clarity to it. So is that fine with the rest of the group? And we will have no action on these properties at this time. And I would also say we probably would just want to continue to keep running lists of expirations coming up, but we will continue to just track those and not act on those at this time. Can I just got verbal yeses and nods from everyone? So
I like that option.
Okay.
So that is direction to staff at this time. Any questions? All right. Thank you so much. And looking forward to Bruce and Cheryl working on that. Thanks again, guys. We'll spread the work a little bit more evenly next year, hopefully. Next, we have the multi-use path and pedestrian bridge grant application. So there'll be the village administrator and assistant public works director and village engineer, Kristen Neal.
Thank you, David. So we're looking for direction from the board tonight due to some timing restraints with submitting a grant application. As part of the grant application, we would like to submit a resolution if the board proceeds forward. So if we do that, that'd be something we would work with the attorney on, have the mayor sign it, and then have the board ratify it at their next board meeting, since the deadline is the 20th of September to submit that. So the board gave direction to do some very preliminary kind of engineering about the concept of a pedestrian bridge. So here's kind of the deliverable from that study for the board to look at that shows that pedestrian crossing over Irving Park Road, kind of connecting to the south side of the tracks and the lot off Irving, and then having a pathway that goes behind some of those properties that abut the train tracks and ultimately ending somewhere around kind of Spring and Main Street. So with this diagram is also the engineer's probable cost and kind of showing the ITEP grant that we be pursuing really historically ranks these types of projects very highly. They really favor the pedestrian and bicycle kind of projects extremely high. So we feel that this really would be well positioned for grant funding. We've pursued ITEP grants in the past for some of the board members who were here. We pursued a multi-use path along Irving Park Road. We're kind of on the outside looking in on some of those grant attempts. And I think bigger picture where other components potentially in the future, if the board were to proceed and we receive grant funding, is looking at that maybe multi-use path again along Irving Park Road to kind of connect to this. And then the tunnel piece of it is more of is primarily related to the train merger and then just the increased density potentially, and well, certainly with Metro 19, the residential development, and then, any future development, there's more freight trains going through here, having a way to get under the tracks so that commuters can get to both sides of the tracks without having to cross them is kind of our thought there. We're still waiting for a cost on that. That wouldn't be part of this grant application, but it could be something in the future that the board may be presented with to talk about if they want to pursue funding for that and or kind of work through with the railroads and others. A lot of communities have been successful in getting them. It's just a long road to get that and very costly.
Bruce.
So just to be clear, you're looking for direction for us so that we can go get the grant.
To submit for the
Submit
grant.
for the grant.
That's all we're looking for.
Right. So back to I wanted to be very specific because of the public comment that was made. This doesn't mean we're going forward. We may not get this grant, just like we didn't get the Irving Park grant. And so should we get this, then we can have the further conversation. But what we're just saying is if we get this grant, we have to at least commit to that 750. But we also have to be realistic that there's many of communities trying for the same money. So
Correct.
I can say quickly, I'm in favor for you going to go and get the grant.
Thank you. Bruce, or Wayne, sorry.
And the
You guys
grant,
are agreeing tonight. I just can't keep you straight now.
and the grant also could be in conjunction with the train merger too. That might provide funds for this also, right?
I mean, it's possible if the
That'd
outcome
be
of
one of our things we'd ask for during the merger.
in that $9 billion price tag that the coalition has identified for the cost of mitigation is this, yes,
Okay,
for
and
the village.
just looking at the routing here, so our intent is, and I think this is our strategic plan too, but
Comp plan, but
intent
yep.
is to have a way for pedestrians off the train to be able to walk to the downtown Roselle. Is that, and it would be well lit. I would think there'd be nice pathway lights. And it will empty onto Main Street at the very end of Main Street. And then you seem to have a bicycle path there. But we have parking there. So would we lose the parking with the bicycle path?
Karen or Kristen, are you able to speak to that?
Yeah, the plan at this point is very preliminary. This is just a concept level plan. As they would move forward, we would look at ways to minimize the amount of parking lost,
Yeah.
knowing that that's a
Okay, I get it. I get it. Okay, so it's a good plan. And it has some finish up work if we get the grant. Okay, I would be in favor of going for the grant, no doubt about it.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
Oh, and I wanted to say something else about the public statements that were made about why don't we do this instead of this? Let me just say this, why don't we do both? You know, as David said, we're trying to work with IDOT to try to do something at Maple. We still do that and have a bridge. So
Yep,
I don't
we're-
think why, people come sometimes with a either or. Well, how about both?
Yep.
Well, we do everybody's idea. We
Yeah.
could do that if we have the money.
Well, in this case, we're engaging on all those fronts, and I think this is a solution that helps solve a number of problems. You know, I'm very public on the record of being skeptical of pedestrian bridge, as I've been called out on, but I think there's realities that have changed, such as a merger that could increase freight train traffic, 8 to 14 additional trains a day, and that has an impact not only, as the chief said last night, would direct traffic probably to Irving Park, increasing that to be a more dangerous crossing. But also we've got more density and other things going on that I think there's things that we need to look at, and why would we not, to Bruce's point, go for a grant if it doesn't happen, like it hasn't happened before. We continue to explore other options and move on. I think this is us being fiscally responsible for our residents and trying to do the best to leverage our money in the best way possible. So.
And I'm not real thrilled on a tunnel, even though that might be a cheaper one. I just think that's a dangerous place to be for some residents.
Once again, we'll cross,
Pathetic.
we'll cross that bridge. when we
tunnel.
Get to
We
it.
get the grant.
Get to the
we can
tunnel
do
when we
that.
get the
No,
grant money, we'll
that's-
figure
that's
out
all right.
cross or go under the tunnel at that point.
And
I agree.
the one thing I will note
Go
though,
for the gold.
the tunnel becomes important because if you have freight train traffic, it's now it impedes your ability to cross the tracks successfully. And if you're parking on the one side and you're trying to get over, that's a way just to continue to
Especially if you
mitigate.
try and catch a commuter train or something of that nature, absolutely.
No, it's all
So,
good.
Cheryl, I had you on the record as in favor. Tom, other Tom? All right, staff has direction to move forward, so we'll get that on the agenda so we can include that in our grant application. So appreciate everyone's comments on that matter. We have no other new business. Is there any other business for discussion only tonight? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
I would make a motion to do that.
Is there a second? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Any abstentions?